I am thrilled for today's conversation. We are talking about three of the biggest elements that can really prevent women from showing up, stepping, and walking in their power, and ultimately living life small. And those three things are guilt, resentment, and not knowing your purpose. And y'all, there is no one better that I can think of that I personally have the privilege of knowing than holistic health coach, yogi, professional Nancy Ma. She is an expert at what she does and effectively breaking women free and really helping them to live a life loud and large and in alignment with who they were created to be in the first place. And Carl Jung says it better than she and I both can. He says the greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents. And that is precisely what Nancy helps us do. So Nancy, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited because this conversation, we've only ever had one other conversation on the Knowing Show that was very targeted for women. And so I'm excited to dive in because, there's so much content out there that can serve both genders and serve both in their own individual setting, but then collectively. And so I'm excited to have this conversation for women, especially thinking about stay-at-home moms. Actually, as I was reading your website, I was like, oh, my mom needs her. I'm just thinking about these wonderful, wonderful women who have given their lives to everyone around them, and then there's nothing left over for them. I'm curious, if you don't mind, who are the core women that you serve? Because as I was reading this, I was like, oh man, I was thinking of all these people and myself who could benefit. Who are your core audience?
Mostly I serve women who have great ambition and desire to have a business, grow their career, and also struggle with an autoimmune condition, which is, I don't like to call it an illness. I would say it's a set of conditions where their body is mistakenly attacking their own healthy tissues.
Mm.
And I think in a way, women do struggle with autoimmunity overall. All women do to some degree. And the more we attack ourselves, the more we are critical of ourselves, the more expectations we have of ourselves, the more pressure we put on ourselves. We have this form of self-rejection. And if you have too much of that for too long, it manifests into an autoimmune condition.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more so about the primary target of women is the women who have a big ambition, have a big dream, and something's getting in the way in terms of their own physical health to be able to actualize that dream. And then on the flip side, for let's take even my sister. She's a stay-at-home mom, but she has this big dream of opening a house specifically dedicated for people who have lost their spouses, because she lost her spouse when she was 26. And so she's technically a stay-at-home mom, but has this big dream of opening this business. Is she somebody who would fit kind of in that avatar where maybe you are, to staying at home to take care of the kids, but you do have a business on the side, or you are dreaming and hoping of running a business someday?
Yeah, if their symptoms are limiting their ability to go and do what they want. So generally
Wonderful.
they struggle with extreme exhaustion, brain fog, and body aches and pains.
Mm. And that first kind of manifestation, it's after probably years of suppressing whatever you said, self-rejection. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so self-rejection is this criticism we have on ourselves, and
Mm.
I've definitely been guilty of this for much of my life, of saying to ourselves, "You're not good enough. You're not doing enough. You don't have enough." And that voice actually is not our own, it's inherited from the unconsciousness. But because we hear it so much, we think it's our own voice.
Yeah.
And so that's a form of self-rejection. If I were to say to you, "You're not good enough," there might be a part of you that might feel that as a rejection. But when we say it to ourselves, we're rejecting ourselves, and our spirit feels that. And so
Yeah.
that's why it shows up as burnout. It shows up as energy crashes. It shows up as blurred vision.
Wow. And how old are we typically, when we start start doing that to ourselves? Like these symptoms that are showing up in adulthood, when did it really actually start?
Usually in childhood.
Mm,
Usually. There are exceptions. Even my daughter, who is 11, and she's a firstborn. Are you older or younger?
I'm right in the middle. I'm number 4.
Okay. So, I'm not sure if it's a firstborn thing, but she's 11 and there is a lot of pressure for her to perform. And I would
Mm,
like to think that I don't put that pressure on her. Well, she 1 year, maybe 2 years ago, she came home and mostly she got all B's and 1 or 2 A's in art and gym. Well, she's very athletic, she's very artistic, and she goes, "I want straight A's." And I said, "Okay, well, if you want it, what are you gonna have to do?" She goes, "Well, I guess I have to do more homework." So then sure enough, the next year she worked harder, she got straight A's. And she sometimes gets stressed and she's really hard on herself. And I'm always like, "If you want it, you go get it. I'm not here to push them to do anything." So I don't know if it's a function of just society, and I hate to
mm,
just put everything on society, but I'm not really sure why some of us have more pressure on ourselves than other. I certainly grew up with a lot of pressure, but my pressure did come from my parents. It was obvious, you need to get good grades, you need to get into good school, you need to make money. I
mm,
definitely don't put any of that pressure on my daughter.
mm,
So she still feels that. I hope not to
mhm.
the degree that she would have a complex, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So some of it is mirroring in terms of society, I think that there is something of very deep in our subconscious, those narratives that are just infiltrating, whether it's TV or TV shows, movies, wherever it's coming from, in addition to social media. What are the subconscious narratives that especially our daughters are picking up? But then what are we modeling for them? So Nancy, I would love to lean into that aspect of truly modeling the type of self rejection is effectively the antithesis of self-love. So how can we as mothers model for our daughters how we should be engaging with our bodies?
With our bodies and our spirit and our entire
Yeah.
being.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad you said that because I said bodies and I was like, well, there's more there. So yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to be human and to be vulnerable to
Mm,
with our children and to always show your whole self, not just the parts of you that you think the world needs to see. It's showing up in that vulnerability and acknowledging I'm not perfect, but here I am just doing my best. And I would
mm,
like to think and believe that that is what, let's say that I'm saving her, but hopefully preventing her from working herself into a burnout. And if that's her path and she has to learn from that, so be it. But
mhm.
I think by modeling that, we're here to do our best and we can't do it all at the same
Yeah.
time. And I think that is we all I think have a desire to be better. I would hope I think we do. That I think that is innate that we have that desire to be better. And because I do model my efforts and my strive, my drive to my children. So I think they see that in us and they
Mm,
want to be better themselves and they're super competitive and they are hard on themselves. And I think that can work in your favor to a
mm,
limit until it becomes self-deprecating. Right. And that is it can be a slippery slope. But I think in just always reminding the next generation that there is no perfect ideal. It's whatever you feel is best for you. As long as you're
mm.
growing in the process, that's what you need.
That's so beautiful. I love how you said modeling through vulnerability. I think that that's something that's so missed is because we are showing up in what we want our ideal to be and like how we want to be perceived. But I had this realization about a year ago. I realized that in our kids asking mom and dad what's wrong, and we're like, nothing's wrong. Well, they know something's wrong. So effectively, we're gaslighting them. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's so dangerous, damaging. And we are also simultaneously gaslighting ourselves by way of not honoring what's going on inside us. You said bodies, spirit, souls, are we actually honoring our own selves through modeling the right behavior? Because in so doing, we're teaching them how to care for themselves by the way in which we show up and care for ourselves. So, working with these women, what's kind of the process you take them through? Because you're talking about, we talk about that initial quote from Carl Jung. It's the greatest tragedy is an unlived life. And so how do you correlate the living life fully with this autoimmune disease predicated in self-rejection?
The first thing I do with all my clients is I take them through a process where we just pause. We just super slow down, and they have to just sit in the stillness of observing their life. And yeah, I do get them to tell me about their childhood and about their day-to-day and about the big events in their lives. And almost 100% of the time, their symptoms start around some big event. And it doesn't mean big as in like huge car crash. It just means it was big to them. It was a significance. It was a turning point that created some sort of unprocessed emotions within them. So I like to use this example to share what trauma can do, but doesn't have to look like trauma, because trauma doesn't look any certain way. It's just however it is processed in you. So when I was in grade 8, I was graduating from middle school, and there was a girl in my class, and she won all these big trophies. And my parents, who had been to my cousin's graduation at the same school, had seen my cousins win all these awards. So there was an expectation for me to win awards. But this other girl, she had, her average was 97, and my average was a 95. So she beat me in all the awards. And then I did get the top student of the class award. And they gave me this little felt badge. It was green and orange. And I was on a big trophy, but I was really proud of myself. I went on stage and I was in a beautiful dress, and I was really proud of myself. But my parents, we didn't go celebrate or anything like that. They didn't believe in that because it was just grade 8. Anyway, we get home and I'm just waiting for them to say something, waiting for them to say, good job. I'm so proud of you. And I said, finally, after dinner, I said, aren't you going to say something? And they said, say what? I said, I don't know. I want an award. And my dad said, they only gave you that because they felt sorry for you.
Oh, wow. That's so sad.
It is. And my parents are amazing, and they mean well, and they love me so much, and they've always loved me so much. And that was my dad's way of protecting me from having a high. But that memory was seared into my body. And my whole life from like 13 on, I believe that I had to be better than everyone else, or else, and even if I was, it would mean that the only reason I was successful is because someone felt sorry for me, that I never earned whatever I got. So all my accolades were achieved with guilt, because I never really deserved anything I got, because someone down the line felt sorry for me.
Wow.
And so now, after being an adult, like 30 years later, being able to process this and being able to release it and forgive my parents for doing what they didn't know would be so kind of damaging or harmful, I can do that. And I can walk my clients through like understanding why they show up the way they do. We don't want to show up frazzled. We don't want to show up on edge. But there are things that have happened, especially in childhood, that have shaped us so much, but we didn't know how to process. And I wasn't even allowed to cry. If I cried, my parents were refugees. They were on a boat and left Vietnam like 40 something years ago. And so they had a reason to cry. I never had a reason to cry. Right. And so every generation deals with their own situations and traumas. And it doesn't have to be so like damaging. I know a lot of times people, and sometimes it is. I do unfortunately work with a lot of women who have been abused. Right. So, and either way, whether you're traumatized or not, there's still some guilt that, as a girl, I know men, they definitely deal with their own problems, and boys, they deal with their own issues, but I don't think guilt is one of them. Like my son doesn't feel guilty even when he does something wrong, you know? And as a girl, I think we always feel guilty no matter what happens.
Mhm.
And so it's not that I never feel guilty. I see it. I feel it. I see it, acknowledge it, and I can process it and release it and know when it's serving me and when it's
Mm.
not. But so I think to answer your question, when does it start or why, or what's my process? I help them walk through. I never like for people to live in the past because that doesn't serve you. I
Yeah.
just want to go to the
Yeah.
past enough for them to understand, to like shed a light or turn on a light switch at a dark time in their lives so that they can see like how that shaped them. And then they can literally take that and bring it out in the trash, you know? But
Mm.
if we don't do that, it festers. It for sure festers.
And then to your point, it turns into these autoimmune conditions because we're self-sabotaging ourselves.
Yeah.
So what initially starts off as guilt or resentment or maybe even a self-loathing, it translates into, and that starts in your spirit and soul, right? Your emotional level, your spiritual level, but then that transcends into, or translates down into the body.
Mhm.
And really takes form there. Have you ever read The Body Keeps a Score by Bessel van der Kolk? Yeah.
Mhm.
So can you talk to us a little bit about the science there of, why is it that our pathways are so connected? So often it's like, let me go to the doctor because I feel ill, rather than is there actually something at the root at an emotional level? I think that we're still kind of new in understanding the connection between body and spirit and body and emotion.
Mhm. So I think guilt, resentment, then the self-loathing or self-criticism that they're connected, but they're not the same. So I think what happens is with the guilt, we feel like we're never enough. So then we
Mm,
end up doing so much to make up for this void that we think we have. And then
mm,
because we're doing so much, we get exhausted. And that exhaustion brings about the resentment of why am I the one doing all the work? Because they
mm.
haven't made the connection that they're doing all the work because they don't feel worthy. And they
Wow.
have been able to make the connection and they aren't because they can't make the connection with themselves, they can't make the connection with someone else. It's hard to how do you make a connection, a deep spiritual connection with another person, whether your partner, a child, parent, if we are disconnected from ourselves, right? And so that guilt turns into resentment, and that resentment now will keep
Mm,
building and festering as self-criticism. So how does this play out in the physiological level? So I'm sure you know the Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
mhm,
right? So when we do so much to make up for some amount of lack that is never fillable, but we think it is, and we lie to ourselves and we think if we just do this one thing, or if we just take care of this person, and or we just reach this next milestone, then we can work on our health, or then everything's going to be fine.
right.
And then the pylon just keeps getting pushed back. And so when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have at the base level, you have physiological needs. So for us to live, to be alive, we need water, shelter, food, right? And sleep. If we don't have sleep, we die. So people are alive, but they're not living because none of those things are optimal. They get by on 6 hours of sleep. They wake up throughout the night. So their body's never healing. They don't
Mm,
hydrate, so they can't be in flow. And they're not nourished. Their body's not nourished. So their energies don't have the capacity to actually grow and feel vibrant. Right. So something we feel at a spiritual level, this disconnect or this lack or this void now has affected our body because now we're not feeding ourselves. So when we're not feeding our spirit, we're also physically not feeding ourselves.
mm. Hmm. That's so good. Nancy, I love just the simplicity of the connection of those pieces. And so when you come and confront guilt, I mean, really, is guilt kind of the number one stemming agent that transcends down to everything? Well, or just the lack of worthiness,
It's similar.
that
Yeah. It's it is that.
yeah.
It is. It's
Yeah.
the lack of worthiness. It's the insecurity. It's the never feeling enough.
Mm. And to
Mhm.
your point, you said, tracing it back to core moments in our childhood, that was something that was so important for me in coming to know who I am, is tracing down, why do I think this way? Why am I operating this way? What's the core belief of this behavior? And then tracing it back to the memory that it effectively is holding ties there, because otherwise, if we're just trying to cut off the behavior without going to the root belief, we're not actually making real change. And so, to kind of, how do you encourage people to go back and go to those core moments and memories?
Um, First, I get a kind of an observational study of their day to day, and then I see what kind of thoughts dominate their day. And when I see those patterns, and they see it too because they're writing it down, they're observing themselves, almost like they're levitating and seeing their life from a bird's eye view. Then we talk about that, and we dive deeper into, okay, that thought right there of, I need to clean the house or else my husband won't be happy. Like, where did that come from? And then it might be because I saw my dad do that to my mom. One of my clients, her story was that um, her mom, when her dad was retiring, she was really getting really excited, and he's like, "What's there for you to be excited about? You're not retiring. You still are going to be doing what you're doing every day. You just clean the house. That's your only job." And it was this dismissive response to her mom's happiness and eagerness. And so she felt like, oh, if her mom's going to be degraded because she didn't do her job as a housewife. So now my client, she's feeling, oh, now that's the subconscious belief. We were able to connect that. That's why she does what she does, or that's why she overworks herself, because she had that core wound growing up.
Mm. And so much of it is from what's modeled for us. It's not necessarily something happening to us. You gave the example earlier of, it's almost like, well, of course I'm going to go tend to myself after I get into a big car wreck. That obviously that's a big capital T trauma moment. But so often these little T moments, these little T traumas are the ones that hold so much weight and carry into us as adulthood, where it's really little Christene making that decision because of that core little T wound that's never been healed, but yet affecting this big behavior milestone in my life. So
Mhm.
I love the observational analysis and paying attention to the thought patterns. I was talking to a woman the other day, and she was just like, it is the hardest thing to control my mind. And so as you're encouraging women to kind of move from this place of not enough, worthiness, guilt, that leads to guilt, that leads to resentment, etc., what are some shifts that you really kind of help them take? And what are those kind of first steps?
Um, I want to answer that after I address the lady you're talking to who said she has a hard time controlling her mind. And I think the challenge that there might be that she's trying to control her mind, because her mind is not to be controlled, right? And so when we try to do that, it's this game that we'll always lose with or at, right? So instead of trying to control the mind, what I do with my clients is I help them observe their mind. And it's a very different game when you're observing something rather than when you're playing something to win, to beat it. You can't control your mind because things come at us all the time. But if we slow down to observe it and we understand where these thoughts are coming from, that's actually when you can control it, but it's not through controlling, it's through shifting
Mhm.
some pieces. So
Mm.
that said, what I do with all my clients is once we understand that, we pause and we slow down. And in this process, they don't change anything about their lives because I want to know it at while it's happening. And then we go to the basics. Like all my clients, there's none of them who hit the basics. And that's it's so simple, right? But it's hard for them because they're not used to taking care of their physiological needs. But at the core, they have to get enough sleep. They have to move enough throughout the day. They have to make sure they're eating nourishing foods. And
Mm.
they have to hydrate, right? Those basic things. I spend so much time with them just hitting the basics, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, then we work on their nervous system safety. How can
Mm.
they make sure that the alarm doesn't keep triggering? Because their thoughts are triggering their nervous system. There's no real alarm. There's no real fire. I mean, there's no reason for that alarm to keep getting triggered, but it does through their everyday habits. So we work on the nervous system next after that.
I love that. Okay, so really first addressing our core needs. Am I actually tending to my body the way that it needs to in order to then get to the next level of, okay, is my nervous system even able to function properly? And when we think about when you're saying the nervous system, I think of it as kind of like the 4 Fs, the fight, flight, fear, or freeze or fawn. Those are kind of the 4 Fs that are typically signaled by the nervous system when we're in a state of survival mechanism. So in your experience, is it tending to the body, ensuring that it actually has even the resources to then come and kind of confront our mind that is in that survival kind of animalistic mode? But because we actually have the resources in place, we can then confront it in a way that we understand the genesis by doing the deep work and going to understand the past stories. We actually have the resources, gas in our tank, so to say.
Yeah.
And then in terms of regulating the nervous system, what does that look like?
It's with practice. It's just practice, reframing beliefs until you believe the new thing. And it's hard, but it just like any skill, it's done with practice, right?
Yeah.
And so it's breath work, meditation, prayer, and just knowing your thoughts. And I learned this from Brian, who I think he learned from somebody else. Oh, Michael O'Neill, I think it was. But we look at thoughts like thought trains. So if a certain thought is going to lead to a certain station, and you know that, and you don't want to go to that certain station, you have to get off that thought train and go on another thought that's going to serve you. And if you keep eating what serves you, keep you thinking the thoughts that serve you, then that's going to lead to the station that gives you peace, because that's what our nervous system needs. The nervous system just needs peace.
Nancy, that's brilliant. I love that. Every single thought has a destination. And effectively, what destination do we even want? You said this. I was talking to you before we even started. What are the core emotions? Guilt and resentment. But then another big problem for most women is we actually don't know what we want in the first place. So do we even know the desired destination in order to choose the thought and consequently the action to then get us to that destination? So you're talking about peace. I think a lot of people categorically would say peace. Yeah, I want that. But that probably means that we actually have to eliminate some of the things that are habits to us. So when you're talking about analyzing our day and what are the thoughts that we're continuously thinking, and also the actions that go in concert with that. So can you speak a little bit to that? Because I think I love this point.
Yeah. So if we talk about peace as the destination, and people can say, oh, yeah, I want that. But if we look at their thought train, so thoughts lead to beliefs. Thoughts repeatedly leads to our beliefs. Our actions are based on our beliefs, right? And the actions that we make repeatedly leads to our habits. And we are our habits. We are what we do repeatedly, right? And so if we want peace, but the thoughts you have are leading to actions that don't lead to peace, then there's a misalignment there, right? And so if they want peace, they have to see, okay, that this thought will lead to this action. So if I want peace, I will spend an hour every morning with myself in meditation and in self-love, whatever that looks like for you. That's going to give you a way better chance of peace than going and doing all these things for other people that bring you no joy, right? And it's practice. It's hard for some of my clients. They have to go for 6 days. And then on the 6th day, they'll say, oh, okay, this is what it feels like. Right. But at first you're just going through the motions and it's foreign and you don't know what you're doing with yourself. And it feels like they're doing nothing. Then they feel guilty because they're not being productive. And so it's this, you just have to sit with the pain until it dissolves.
That's so, Nancy, that's so good. And it makes me think of guilt is such a familiar feeling. So we actually feel more comfortable in guilt than we do in peace, because peace as of now is foreign. And so if we're trying to get to a new destination and trying to get to a new cognitive state, yes, but emotional state, and train our nervous system that actually know it's okay to not exist in this primal fight, freeze, fear, fawn state. We actually really do need to be brave enough to sit in the discomfort of, you said, the pain of, would you say the pain of also something new? Like, yes, the pain of whatever that thing is that we're confronting, but also the pain of peace is uncomfortable if we're not used to it. We have to build, like you said, putting in the reps.
Yeah, for sure. It's anything outside of your comfort zone. And for some people, the pain that they're used to, the familiar pain, is the comfort. And they'll argue till their face is blue that, oh, I don't want to be like this. This is so uncomfortable. But it's what they know. And I was telling my kids this the other day. We were in the car and we heard this song. I don't remember what song it was. It was from like 20 years ago. And I was singing along and I go, what am I doing? I hate this song. I used to hate the song so much. But why was I singing it? And it was just because it was familiar. And it brought me to a time 20 years ago where it was popular. And so we do that all the time with things we don't like. We just get used to it and we tolerate it because it's the evil we know versus the evil we don't know. Right. And so, yes, sitting with the pain of, this is uncomfortable. I'm not used to taking care of myself. I'm not used to just appreciating the time I have with nature or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's so good. And let's talk for a minute about, I use it in my book, Knowing. I talk about doing versus being. And, we're not human doers, or human beings. But in order for us to kind of do, propelled from a state of being, right? Because it's not that we just sit and sing songs all day and, meditate. It's that we actually have those big ambitions. We have the dreams. So how do we completely kind of fundamentally shift our modus operandi to be from this place of being, from this place of peace? Well, we then go and do.
I think it's important that everybody takes a vacation. I think it's important to at least take some time. If you can't do a vacation, take a weekend to intentionally slow down. Just slow down and sit with your thoughts. And then sit with, what is it that you want? Going back to the goal, because people are so disconnected and they keep going through the perpetual hamster wheel and feeling lost. And if you sit with that, you know what you want. At the end of the day, we all want the same things. We want the freedom to speak our truth, to be ourselves. We want to have health, optimal health and prosperity. We want to be able to grow as a person. We all want the same, self-actualization. When we look at, again, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We want that. But people don't know they want that because they haven't sat with themselves long enough to connect with what they want and letting their purpose and their highest self fuel their desires. They're letting whatever the project of the day is or whatever fire they have to put out get them out of bed, right? So I think when you connect with your highest self or your highest sense of purpose or with God or whatever it is, your belief that it's going to drag you out of the mud or out of the trenches and get you up, I think that's
I love the dragging you out of the mud and getting you up. Y'all, that's so, so good. I feel like, Nancy, I like walking away with just kind of one clear prompt. And y'all, I'm going to ask myself this, and I'm going to ask you, what is it that you want? What is the one thing? What Gary Keller and Jay Papasan talk about this in the book, The One Thing. What's the one thing, the lead domino in your life that's going to knock down all of the rest? And, if we identify what's the one thing that we really feel called to, that we know that we want, it has the emotional prowess to get us out of bed and to get that drive going so that we can take that pause. I love to do it every day in the morning. That time is so critical and so important because it feeds and nurtures our spirit. And I've found, Nancy, the more I sit every single morning and read my eulogy, who do I want to be? What do I want to accomplish by the end of my life? That is the gas. I'm literally, I feel like I'm filling up my tank for the day. The more I actually spend the time to journal and get out what needs to get out of my soul, spirit, and self so that I can then refill with my ideal. Man, it's like that exchange of energy that I and you can do for ourselves rather than being so horizontally and externally reliant on the type of engagement we might have throughout the day, because maybe we'll get the good encouragement. Maybe we'll actually get other people giving us some gas in our tank. But for the most part, a lot of times we're the ones giving it. So we have to be coming from a place of being full. So thank you so much, getting so crystal clear on what we want to have that be the thing that drives us forward. I love that.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah. Nancy, what is one question that I have not asked you that man has made the biggest impact for these women?
Um, what what do you do for fun?
Mm,
I think when people are struggling, it can feel so serious. Pain can feel so serious.
yeah.
And I love Bernard Shaw's quote. I'm not sure if you heard this one. We don't stop playing because we get old. We get old because we stop playing. And fun
Chills.
is a really big fun is a really big driver of our home. A lot of our life is centered around fun. And what's fun to us, of course, might not be fun. For other people, might be boring, but it doesn't matter because we have fun. We have so much fun in our family. We love to
Mm,
just swimming, and we played basketball, and we played ping pong, and we played board games, and we love to travel, and we love to go see shows. That's what's fun for us. Like just to
yeah.
live. We love just spending time with each other and living. And people don't have fun anymore. They just
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that I connect people with what's fun for them.
Mm. Nancy, what a meaningful life you're living to help other people live fully, and it takes a waking up of sorts. It takes a willingness to step into the discomfort. And on the other side is freedom. So Nancy, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you so much for everything you've given us. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you too.
Yeah. If people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
Painproof.com is my website, and Instagram, Facebook, same thing.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Y'all, this time of, she said, take time to know what you want. If you guys want 21 days of free vertical alignments, go to verticalalignment.com. It's just morning prompts. Take time every day. It changes our lives. And go to learn more about Nancy if you're looking for something that really can get that personalization, one-to-one coaching. Nancy, thank you. I'm so grateful, and I hope to have you back on here soon.